closure of coal power stations like Hazelwood have been celebrated as a win for the environment. But Australians are being told to prevent blackouts. We can't switch those that are left off yet.
If you were to turn off coal-fired power stations today, the lights are going out.
There are fears of job losses and rising electricity prices as the country's largest coal-fired power station is shut down early.
Following Origin Energy's decision to close Australia's biggest power station 7 years early.
18 months ago, Origin announced it would bring forward the closure of the nation's biggest power station, Eraring, in the New South Wales Hunter region. But now the New South Wales government wants to extend the plant's life beyond 2025. It could come at a cost of hundreds of millions of dollars a year to taxpayers.
I've got an obligation to keep the lights on, to have reliable energy, particularly for our manufacturing sector.
Economist Nikki Hartley says not only could taxpayers be footing the bill for Eraring's operating costs, she's crunched the numbers on the potential social, economic and environmental costs.
So if we look at the emissions from Eraring, you can see that last financial year it was over 10 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent. If, for example, we had a carbon price like the European Union does, and that's the value that the New South Wales government uses in its cost-benefit analysis, we would find that this is costing society over $1.7 billion a year.
The market should determine these outcomes.
CEO of rival energy company Indepth is also critical of the New South Wales government's approach, but for different reasons. Origin has a monopoly on the electricity being sold from Eraring, and Jeff Dimery wants in on the action.
Our concern would be, for instance, if the government was subsidising Origin's power station and then Origin was able to retail that to the market, they would have a competitive advantage in that situation. If you're going to subsidise the input costs, the output should be spread so that consumers get the benefit.
There are 19 coal-fired power stations left in Australia. Historically, they've been state-owned, but over the years, many have been privatised. As the ageing infrastructure declines and the market turns to cheaper renewable sources of energy, the last coal-fired power station is expected to close in 2051. Last financial year, 58% of our electricity came from coal. That's down from 86% when records began in 2006. There's no coordinated national response to shutting down coal power stations, and that spooked state governments, especially those that have sold off those assets. They're now concerned about maintaining reliable energy sources. Commercial realities and pressure from shareholders is driving early closures of some generators.
These are often uneconomic assets that are often running at a loss.
Last year, AGL announced it was bringing forward the closure date of Loy Yang A in Victoria's Latrobe Valley after pressure from investors, including its biggest shareholder, tech billionaire Mike Cannon-Brookes.
These things are not running in 2045, right? You can bring it forward to 2048, 2045. Economically, I can't understand how that happens without some sort of massive subsidy coming from somewhere.
Last month, the Victorian government signed a secret deal with AGL to share the financial risk of keeping the nation's most carbon-intensive power station open.
What this is about is certainty that Loy Yang A power station will be there until 2035.
Indepth owns another major coal generator, Loy Yang B in Victoria's Latrobe Valley. The company hasn't set a closure date for its plant, arguing early closures will push up household bills.
Our business would be better positioned by, right now, today, other coal plants coming out of the market quicker. And I'm saying don't do that. Don't do that. So we're not talking up our book. We're talking on behalf of consumers here saying, let's get the pace of this right. I'm arguing to keep energy prices down, not to push energy prices up.
In 2021, Victoria signed another confidential deal with Energy Australia to keep the Yallourn coal power station open until 2028. Alinta CEO Jeff Dimery says the company hasn't sought a deal to keep operating Loy Yang B. He's calling for transparency about deals signed to keep coal-fired power stations open.
The public have a right to know what they're spending their money on. And I would note here in Victoria now, as you rightly point out, 2 of the 3 coal-fired power stations have some arrangement with the government. Given that we trade in a market with those other parties, I think it would be good to have full disclosure for that information to be made publicly available.
The governments at all levels, federal and state, are between a rock and a hard place. We can't shut things down until we've deployed an equivalent amount of generation and storage.
Here we go. Let's go.
Inventor and former climate advisor to US President Joe Biden, Saul Griffith, says Australia has been caught out and is a decade behind its transition to renewables.
Most of our big-scale renewable projects are being held up with delays to transmission and community objections. We need almost a wartime level of response. We don't have the social licence yet to deploy all the renewables at the speed we need to go, yet we also don't really have the social licence to continue to burn coal, and that is the conundrum.
Nikki Hutley says Australia is already on shaky ground when it comes to meeting its 2030 emissions reduction targets.
Any extension or expansion of mines, of fossil fuel generators, of fossil fuel production just adds to the collective amount of emissions in the atmosphere. We may still get to our target ultimately. We can get to our target even if we don't close down until the last day of 2029. But unfortunately, the amount of emissions that we're putting into the atmosphere, we're blowing our global budget.
Without faster rollout of renewables, both sides of the coal debate acknowledge our reliance on the fossil fuel could drag on.